What Kelly means to us. She is GMP's chief cheerleader, problem solver, historian, and fortune teller. I think one of her greatest gifts is her confidence in us, which we all do our best to live up to. Thanks, Kelly. We are the cars and she is the road. Kelly has our back when we're about to get hit by the bus. Last but not least, does she know her Tar Heel basketball or what? The art of quilting is woven throughout the history of the United States. In colonial times, the quilt began out of the need to provide warm covers for beds and for hanging in doorways and windows to keep the cold winds from passing through cracks and crevices. Quilts were simple and expedient solutions to problems. In 1987, the North Carolina General Assembly funded the Gov Morehead Preschool. The preschool found a home in Raleigh at the Gov Morehead School for the Blind. Hired as diagnostician for the preschool, Miss Kelly Davis began stitching the layers of her life's quilt. Just 1 year later, in 1988, the preschool added 2 additional sites in Chapel Hill and Greensboro, serving less than 50 students. Kelly's job responsibilities required working with all the sites. She began to nurture lifelong relationships with coworkers, politicians, and administrators. It wasn't long before her quilt squares began to take on the shape of a much larger project as she was appointed director of the preschool. In 1991, another expansion of services added 5 new squares to her quilt, with Morganton, Wilmington, Charlotte, Greenville, and Fayetteville. She provided a personal touch to leadership with simple and expedient problem solving as the program slowly began to build a strong reputation. In the 1700s, Pennsylvania and the Midwest of the United States were seeing an influx of Amish colonists. These unassuming people immigrated from Europe and were unfamiliar with quilting, but rather used feather beds they remembered from Europe. They were a quiet people and kept somewhat to themselves. Their lifestyle reflected their focus on faith, hard work, and community. By the early 1800s, through contact with outsiders and out of necessity, the Amish women began making quilts. Like the well-known barn raisings, the Amish women organized quilting bees, allowing opportunities for the women to help each other. Their artistry and unique craftsmanship created a reputation that continues in the American culture today. Their quilts and quilt designs were practical, functional, and of fine craftsmanship. A similar journey was playing out for the preschool. Through the leadership of Ms. Davis, the preschool was no longer allowed to isolate itself in just a few communities in North Carolina. The need for vision services across the state at large became quite apparent. By 1998, the preschool was funded to provide services in every county in North Carolina, serving over 300 students. Ms. Davis maintained her faith in the skills, talents, and hard work of her employees, nurturing them and encouraging them to work independently for the good and honor of all. In spite of great distances between staff, she orchestrated her own style of quilting bees that created opportunities for the staff to work together to help each other. Through her inspiration, she successfully built a strong sense of community, stability, and fine craftsmanship. With all the squares from around the state stitched together, her first quilt had the qualities of the sunshine and shadow, a popular quilt pattern among the Amish. The preschool, like the sunshine and shadow quilt, was an elegant example of pure artistry, accomplished only by the planned stitches of an artist, a balance of pride and humility, simplicity and complexity. The Amish did not have a corner on the quilting market. During the 1800s, the quilting craft continued to grow across the United States. It was customary for a young girl to make a baker's dozen of quilt tops before her marriage. This provided her with 12 utility quilts for use in her new home for warmth, and 1 great quilt for the bridal bed. It also became popular for a mother to make a quilt for each of her children. These quilts were given to each child as they set out in life on their own. A variation to this custom continues today in the heirloom quilts, as modern-day quilters continue to make quilts for their children and grandchildren. As in the design of a quilt, Ms. Davis's commitment to her field of visual impairment was several layers thick. And, as with any quilter, Ms. Davis was not satisfied with the creation of only 1 quilt top represented by her work with the preschool. She shared her craft and many other programs serving students with visual impairments and blindness. She brought a variety of squares together, the preschool, very special arts, and Gov Morehead School, and expertly stitched them together, creating her own heirloom quilt. As students left Gov Morehead services to start a life of their own and staff attention shifted to new endeavors, this quilt provides sweet memories of the bounty that hard work and community can bring, an heirloom quilt in their hearts. The 1900s found quilting evolving from a necessary art to a more creative one, and current events provided the catalyst for people to continue to hone their quilting skills. With World War I, the world of quilt making was more important than ever. Citizens in the United States were urged to make quilts and save the wool for blankets for the soldiers overseas. And during the Great Depression, with no extra money to buy blankets, quilting continued to be a necessary skill. The need to raise funds for the American Red Cross during World War II triggered the signature quilt. Politicians, business owners, communities at large would sign quilt squares, which were then crafted into quilts to be auctioned off to raise money donated to the Red Cross. Used as a verb, the word quilt is the art of stitching through layers to hold them together. Now, Principal Davis is continuing her quilting artistry as services for students with visual impairments face a political type of war and depression. But through hard times, Ms. Davis uses her skills and love for the students in her quilt to keep spirits and hearts warm and stitched together. She continues to stitch through layers of Gov Morehead School and preschool to hold us together. Today, her quilt is stretched across 2 programs, as Director of Gov Morehead Preschool and Principal of Gov Morehead School. Although her quilt stitches are stretched tightly, she continues to encourage us to gather our own squares of professionalism, creativity, and adaptability, to hone our skills and create our own quilts and keep our lives stitched together. Today, in Kelly's honor, we will create our own signature quilt. There are quilt squares for each person to sign and/or decorate. These squares will be stitched together for us to make an heirloom quilt for Kelly, a reminder of what she means to us. Ms. Davis is our principal, the craftsman of our quilt sublime. Each of us won for squares, tenderly stitched together through time. Buoyed up by her dedication and unwavering commitment, she endows each open heart she finds with faith, hope, and encouragement. Thanks to her, our quilt is held together through change and lots of stress and stormy political weather. She pads each willing square with success and personal best, and with her service, our spirit passes the test. A constant advocate and friend, Kelly is our principal we hold dear. She will say she is undeserving, but we name her our Principal of the Year.